need an Ava dancing game.
I want Unit 01 dancing to the opening. Hello everyone and welcome to the Atcast, the podcast for the study of modern visual culture. It's the harbinger of the end times, Soup.
Am I an angel then?
Sure. Yep. This week, AT stands for Absolute Terror or Absolute Territory or Anniversary Time because it is all of those things. We'll be talking about Neon Genesis Evangelion again, but mostly we'll be talking about the End of Evangelion and also, I guess, the podcast because it's been kind of wild that we've reached a year now, so, you know.
Yeah, we started with Hideaki Anno's Wild Ride, and now we've been in a wild year. And now we're back at Ava.
Boy, you can say that again, you know? It really does feel like we've sort of reached the end of the world. I can feel the third impact coming anytime now.
No.
It's gonna hit us, you know? Maybe it's the second impact. Maybe it's only the second impact.
Oh, so we haven't even started Ava yet.
Technically, Ava takes place in 2015, so we have started it, which... Now that I think about it, makes a lot of sense in terms of how apocalyptic things are getting and how fast. So, yeah, I'm still sick, but I am a little bit peppier today, which is good because we're recording this a little bit later, like at least a couple days later, probably. I'm suffering.
Well, at least your break is here, your winter break, and that means you get to bum at home and recover and relax without school stress.
So you would think that, but that's not even really the case because now that I think about it, it was not that long ago that we recorded the last episode. In fact, now that I think about it, I think it was 2 days ago?
Uh-huh.
Which is, I'm breaking the sort of illusion that we're maintaining of a vaguely sort of regular live thing. I mean, yeah, spoiler warning. I mean, we recorded the last episode 2 days ago, and now we're here.
You giving them all this information? It's supposed to be top secret.
Well, okay, here's the thing, though, is because later today, I decided for some godforsaken reason that I would not only rewatch all of Ava and then end of Ava, I would also do a podcast recording on this day because it was convenient for you. And then also I would do a Dungeons and Dragons game later tonight, a holiday themed Dungeons and Dragons game. I would run that, which I've written the preamble for. So, oh no, we're kind of in dire straits here. And tomorrow, or I suppose maybe I shouldn't say that, but tomorrow, quote unquote, in the abstract, I will also be doing other things, probably not bowling. Some of my friends wanted to go bowling, but at this point, I think it's I'm too sick and I'm too tired. I slept very little last night in order to make room for more Ava.
Oh my god.
I'm kind of a mess right now, but also I promised that I would play some Stardew Valley because it's been forever, so I want to get back to that.
Dude, I played some last night. I tried out the multiplayer for the first time.
Nice. Yeah, it's super fun.
It's really fun.
I was having a great time with it over I think the summer when I was doing it, but It's been a couple months now, so Hopefully we can get back into it. What have you been up to this week, I guess, even though we've sort of gone into the preamble already? We've sort of just dove in.
I have been preparing for the holiday season. We had a Christmas party at work where we had Secret Santa, and my Secret Santa got me a giant gift basket of Ghirardelli chocolate goodies.
Ooh, very nice.
Yeah, it was awesome. My gift was definitely the biggest, and then when I opened it, I was like, "What is in here?" And it's just a nice big old gift basket.
Listen, if you're ever over here, I'll take you to Ghirardelli Square.
Dude, can I eat the square?
Yeah, you can eat the square. It's made of chocolate.
Good.
It's like Willy Wonka's chocolate factory, except the person in charge isn't trying to kill you and turn you into food.
Oh, well, that's lovely. I enjoy not being food.
I enjoy being food.
Do you?
Yeah.
Well, I enjoy eating food, not being food. See, I don't have that kind of like vor fetishism that you do, so like I gotta be separate from it.
I mean, I was just talking about my name, but sure. I mean, we can just bring it back to the vor thing.
Yeah, I mean, I have to. But also, it makes more sense now why you named yourself after food.
Oh boy, this is going places that I don't want it to go. Is there anything else that you have been up to?
That's it.
Okay.
Oh,
All right.
I've been playing more Star Ocean Amnesis. I've gotten
nice. How is that?
deeper into the game. The multiplayer is really fun. They have a couple of technical problems in which, the multiplayer is still in beta. So there's still some weird bugs. Like, there are literally 2 characters who are really good in the game, but they make my game crash most of the time when I party with them.
Oh, so, no.
It's painful. Like, I'm like, because one of those characters is a really good healer who is also the only character in the whole game who has a revival skill.
Oh my.
So she's of course very useful and people love to use her. And yeah, sometimes I've been able to party with her like I think twice out of like the millions of times that I partied now. And yeah. And then the other one is one of the Christmas characters that they released just, a couple weeks ago. So of course a lot of people want to use him because he's also good. And yeah, he also crashes my game.
But he just crashes the game. Merry Christmas. Yeah. Your gift is
Merry
not playing
Christmas.
this game anymore.
Exactly.
Jeez.
Oh, but they released 3 Christmas characters, and one of them that I really want is a character from Star Ocean 2. And I don't know if this is how it is in the original voice acting, but in the mobile game version, she's voiced by Rie Kugimiya. So I really want her on my team.
I've been hearing Rie Kugimiya everywhere because I've been rewatching Toradora. I've been playing Grand Blue. What else have I been doing? I feel like there was one other thing that I've been doing recently where Rie Kugimiya features a lot, but I can't think of it off the top of my head.
Yeah. Yeah, so that's basically it.
Well, good. Yeah. I mean, obviously, last time we recorded, I didn't ask you what you were up to, but it sounds like you weren't up to all that much, so maybe that's a good thing.
Thanks for pointing that out. No, I've been busy, like, trying to get my life together in terms of, like, getting ready for traveling and stuff, so... Yeah.
I mean, it's true. This is like the busiest time of year to do anything, and also like you're just not a real person until the actual vacation starts, and
exactly.
Yeah, it's surprisingly boring a lot of the time because it's just like wrap up. I get it. I understand.
Yeah. Also, holiday shopping, so it's like.
Oh yeah. I mean, I've given up. I'm just like, Mom and Dad, I don't know what to get you. I just don't know. I just don't know.
Yeah, my mom definitely called me earlier in the week in a panic and was just like, I need you to help me order presents for your brother and their family. I was like,
oh my God.
I was like, okay, Mom.
Yeah.
Yeah, because she wants to do online shopping because she's just done. She's done with going to malls and shopping online. I mean, shopping in person. So she wants to do online, but she doesn't know how. So.
Oh yeah. I mean, I totally feel it. I've run into this problem where I think a lot of people have run into issues with like online services like Amazon where they spend too much money because it doesn't feel like real money. Well, I'm kind of in like the opposite situation now, where when I have physical money in my hands, I'm like, okay, this is like throwaway money. This is no longer in my account. I can just use this. And it goes hand in hand with the fact that I'm more likely to buy something if I have it in my hands. So, yeah, going out to malls and stuff is a dangerous proposition because I will buy things that I was on the fence about. And yeah, it is just like that.
I should never take you to a mall then.
Well, I mean, we should go to a mall. You should just make sure I have money first.
But if you don't have money, then you will not spend the money and you'll be fine.
Well, I don't know about that. I wouldn't say that so confidently.
How are you going to spend money that you don't have?
Well, that's something that a lot of people manage. I mean, to my credit, I feel like I have decent self-control online, though. Even though I buy a lot of useless crap, I do buy things quite sparingly when I need to. Yeah, I don't know, but the holiday season is a deadly time for your wallet, and it's just I've just kind of accepted the fact that I'm just not gonna have money until the new year. Like, it's just, you just have to accept it, really. It's.
I mean, yeah.
Yeah,
I agree. I just well, next paycheck is in January, so let's go. let's survive till then.
Pretty much. Well, I've been up to a lot and a little at the same time. Okay. I had a bunch of friends come over. I say a bunch, but it was like two. One came from Sacramento and one came from Oregon, and we all hung out over the weekend, and it was super fun. And I'm glad that my sickness decided to wait until they were gone to really kick in. I was really grateful about that. Because I would have just been miserable. And yeah, that was a super good time. We ate a ton of good food. I probably spent just hideous amounts of money eating. We ate KBBQ, and we tried to go for hot pot, but the line was actually just wild. It was like 30 people because we decided, you know what, like Saturday night, sure, that sounds like a good time to go eat hot pot. Well, yeah, it is a good time to go eat hot pot. It's just too good of a time. So there were 30 parties in front of us, and you're not allowed to make a reservation unless you have 6 people, and we had 5.
Oh, no.
That was unfortunate. Instead, we went to a Korean fried chicken place in the city that my parents recommended, and it turned out to be very, very, very good. So I'm glad about that. And yeah, it's just, we ate so much food. I took my friends to my favorite ramen place because, of course, if you ever come over here, I'll take you to it too. And I love it, and it makes me feel happy and good inside, and I just need to eat it all the time. Give me that delicious pork soup. Tasty. Tasty. Aside from that, it is, I mean, it's Grand Blue season, like I said at the end of last episode, and I have been grinding my brains out while watching Ava. I made a lot of good progress in what is called the Thimble grind, which is where you grind an event to get enough copies of a weapon to, because you uncap weapons, like they have a level cap, and they have 3 stars, 3-star slots, and you uncap them by feeding them each other. So you need 4 copies of a weapon to get a 3-star weapon. Right. And so you need to do this twice if you want the thimbles, because they're good for a certain kind of weapon deck, which is different from the knife grid that I was using. And it turns out that the knife grid just sucks. Like, it's just bad.
You spent all that time grinding knives and it's bad?
Well, like, that's the thing, right? Is I did, and it is bad. It's just because I have another grid, which is a fire grid, which has a bunch of other shit in it that aren't knives. Like 2 or 3 of which are canes, which have even worse attack, but somehow that grid does like way more damage just because fire gets blessed with all the great weapons, and water is just like, I don't know, do you want to be like a super high level player? Why don't you get to super high level and grind all the super high level things, and then you can have an end game grid? And I'm like, that sounds horrifying, actually. That sounds terrible. But I'm making progress because there's the other kind of grid that I'm grinding now, which is the bows called Fimbles, and I made a lot of good progress, but I'm really hitting the iron wall of the grind here. I'm getting into like the hardcore part of it, which I think will be fine. Like it's not like I have things I need to attend to. But I have like 5 days to do that, so I think that means by the time this episode comes out, they'll be gone, which is a horrifying thought. But I'm gonna do my best, and I've got one completely uncapped, so I just need 3 more copies, which means I have to run the mission that unlocks. Okay, so there's like missions that unlock when you do missions. So you have to do the extreme mission a couple times, and then that will give you a random chance of activating the nightmare mission, and then you run the nightmare mission, and then that gives you the material you need to trade for these weapons. And by my calculations, if I can run the highest level, which I can't do every time, but on average, it should be about 57 more of the high level missions. Which
why do we subject ourselves to this tedium?
Well, okay, I'm not gonna lie, I kind of like it now. I'm like, on one hand, I'm like kind of bored out of my skull, but on the other hand, I'm just like, this is kind of nice. Like, I have something to do with my eyes when I'm listening to podcasts or watching videos. The only trouble is, I can't do it while editing the podcast, and I can't do it while doing other games. I mean, to be fair, I did play a little bit of Grand Blue while I was editing the last episode, but that's because the last episode required so little editing. It's actually kind of surprising. It was pretty good. It was like one of the fastest ones to edit because a lot of it just went. It was very nice, very structured, and it just went. And
yeah, I think we can gradually get the guidance to be snappier,
Yeah, guidance are meant to be snappy too. Yeah, like they're meant to be kind of low editing.
Yeah, less
when
rambly
possible.
kind of thing.
Less rambly, more focused.
Yeah.
Whereas the full episodes are just kind of like whatever. We'll just talk about
knife grids and Star Ocean characters.
I mean. And this is funny where you were telling me about how I called it a short and succinct episode.
Oh, yes.
And it's still 46 minutes long. We had a disagreement about what we call short. Now, normally I agree that a Gaiden episode should be 30 minutes or less.
Yes.
But I will argue that 46 minutes is a really good time for us. I think we made a great time with that.
But we can do better. we can hit our standard of 30 minutes or less.
Well, you also have to keep in mind that it's a end of the year wrap up episode. It's not supposed to be 20 minutes long. I mean,
I know, but we were also only talking about 5 series between the two of us, and one of them overlaps. So really, it was 9 series that we were
talked
just
about
like, hey,
9
this
whole
was our
series.
favorite.
What are you talking about?
But we already had talked about them earlier in the year, so all we really had to say was like, we picked this one and why we liked it, and then move on.
Listen, I don't know if you went back and listened to that episode again, but most of what we talked about was stuff that we haven't talked about yet. Because I decided, okay, this is my fault.
Because I decided on a diatribe about stuff that we're going to cover in a future episode, Soup.
You're right. This is completely my fault because I decided to add 2 different series airing this season to my honorable mention list. You're not wrong. That is my B. But yeah, let's just do better next. I don't know if I want to do better necessarily because it was a good episode, I think.
We can always do better.
It just wasn't short by a normal person's standards.
Yeah.
I feel like, listen, 46 minutes is really short for us. That's all I'm saying.
Okay.
That's all I'm saying.
I agree with you. I agree with you.
It's fine. We'll keep the next, whatever the next guidance is, we'll keep it under 30 minutes, I promise. Hopefully. I'm not going to make promises that I can't keep, so I promise.
That's one you will keep.
I'll keep this one.
Okay.
I'll keep this one. So yeah, I mean that's what I've been up to. That's what we've been up to.
Yep.
There's some, well, I mean we'll get into that stuff later, right? We'll talk about the podcast stuff at the end of the episode, which means this episode is probably just going to end up being like 2 hours long, and I'll just be late to my D&D session, and I don't have anything prepped, so I'm just going to cry. So let's talk about Neon Genesis Evangelion, Hideaki Anno's Wild Ride, and the End of Evangelion, because we didn't really talk about it last time, even though we kind of did. We did a very broad strokes episode about Eva, and the thing about it was when we talked about Eva, I hadn't watched it for a couple months, like maybe 6+ months, and having just rewatched it for the first time in like a year and a half, I have to say I always forget how weird this show is. I know I market it to people as a weird show, but every time I watch it, I'm like, this is so weird. And then also I forget that it is chock full of like, and especially the end of Eva, it's chock full of like terrible like body horror.
Oh yeah, yes.
It is horrific to watch. Like beautiful, mind you. The animation is gorgeous in the movie, but it's just not pleasant sometimes. You're like, "Oh, that's gross."
Yeah.
Those are vaginas on her hands. Which isn't necessarily gross, I guess. It's like all the other stuff where it's like flesh being rended from bones and faces melting off and necks being cut. All that sort of stuff, like stuff going into eyeballs. That squicks me out personally. Eyeball stuff.
Yes, they
I don't
do
like
not
eyeball
shy
stuff.
away.
No. It's funny because okay, so for context, and if you've never seen Neon Genesis Evangelion, I don't know what you're doing here, but I'm sure you know what you're doing at this point. So, I mean, whatever, right? Like, proceed with caution.
I mean, this is gonna be like a more deep dive into Ava, like we mentioned just a bit earlier. Our first Ava episode is more like I'd say more like an intro ish.
Yeah, like it's Ava 101.
Yeah, now we're in 102.
Yeah, exactly. Well, okay, so the thing about, and this is something that I'll have to explain because sometimes I forget how this works, but Evangelion, Neon Genesis Evangelion is a 26 episode anime that aired on television, and the End of Evangelion is a movie version of the last 2 episodes. So it is a recreation, because if you watch the last 2 episodes of Neon Genesis Evangelion, they're weird and there's not a lot of anime, really. Because at that point, they had, like, 0 money. And so they did what they could. And so it's a lot of, like, still shots, a lot of, like, really sketchy shots of just, like, still sketches and pencil animation and lots of dialogue, lots of talking, mostly Shinji talking to himself. And what's interesting is that Anno decided that he would go back and remake that as a movie, as the end of Ava, which I think is good, because and I will say I have mixed feelings about this, but I'm glad that both of them exist, I guess is what I'll say. I don't think one of them will erase the impact of the other, right?
Right.
Because I like what they did with the last 2 episodes, where it is clearly on a budget, but they really, really run with it. And the way that they utilize the very sparse animation for dramatic effect is like really good, right? It's like a great way of kind of derealizing and like decoupling you from Ava as anime, right? Or at the very least Ava as entertainment, I guess. You're made consciously aware that you're watching an anime, whereas sometimes before you're not like necessarily. You're kind of like, oh, I'm watching anime, right? And you're like kind of into it. And then the last 2 episodes roll around and you're like, I am watching an anime in like bold letters, right? So I think that's very interesting, and I'm glad that it exists. It's one of those things where it's like, this clearly exists because of budget constraints, and it's not necessarily going to be the most positively received thing, but I like the fact that it exists. Like, in hindsight, I like the fact that the Endless 8 arc exists of Haruhi Suzumiya, but living as like an 11 or 12-year-old watching that weekly, that was suffering. It was 8 whole episodes, Renu. It was the same episode. Anyway, sorry. But yeah, so the End of Eva is a remake of those 2 episodes, and it fills in a bunch of stuff between episodes 23 and 24, which is important because it that part, it doesn't exist in the series, and you have no idea what happens. It's like Shinji kills Kaoru, and then the next episode, the world is over, and Shinji is inside the thought soup of the Human Instrumentality Project.
Yes. Which, it's interesting because I was also on probably like many of the fans who initially watched, Eva, very, very confused by the ending because I didn't understand it at all. But
man, I was so confused.
I know. I got really angry too. I was like, what is this? Like, after watching all that, I get this kind of thing. But I was very young when I first watched Eva. Yeah. And then knowing the whole context of the series now, I can appreciate the last 2 episodes far more, right?
Right, exactly. Yeah.
You understand exactly what he was going for, but that's also because you already have the context, right? But the fans who initially watch it, they don't have that kind of context unless they really hardcore like analyzed the series as they went and then leading up to the finale. So
yeah, it's a very peculiar taste, I would say.
Exactly. Like, I'm glad that the movie exists in order to give a little more context so that people, if they decide to rewatch the series after having watched End of Eva, can more fully understand what he was going for. And
yeah. I mean, I will say this about Anno is that Eva, even though he keeps making it, like, just over and over again, he just keeps making Eva. Like, Shin Godzilla was basically just Eva. I kind of don't hate that. And it's very interesting to me because it tells me some very key things about Anno, which is that, for one, he really, really, really loves animation. And so that's a big part of why End of Eva exists, is because it reanimates the end of the series. And boy, did he go all out. Like,
oh yeah.
That whole scene where Asuka is just fighting the like fake Evas or the whatever's the Eva project, the Eva series.
The
that's what it's called.
Mass production Evas.
Yeah, the mass produced Evas. Right? That is a gorgeous piece of animation, and
it's really well done.
It, more than anything in this series, conveys so well that sense of heavy weight to these like big towering things. Not that the series doesn't do this well, because it does, but it does. The scene where Asuka is fighting the Eva series is so dynamic and so like filled with weight that I'm so impressed watching it. I'm like, wow. Like the way that it the way that Asuka's body moves like a little bit later, a little bit with a little bit of drag, and like gets pushed back with this big sword. Yeah. It's really great. And like that's the case throughout the movie. It's very pretty, and even when it's like horrifying, even the body horror is very well animated. It feels very Akira sometimes in the way it works, but
yeah.
Right, because there's like flesh blobs like everywhere. There's just almost so many flesh blobs. So many flesh
Many
blobs.
fleshy things.
Yeah, and I'm definitely like there's a lot of gore because fucking Unit 02 gets gored and entrails kind of gore. It's really gross, actually. It's just very gross to watch. But as a piece of animation, it's gorgeous. And you can tell that with the rebuilds too. Like, this is also Anno's deal. He's like, guess what, motherfuckers? I got money. I got CG. I'm gonna make the best goddamn thing you ever seen with your whole eyeballs.
I'm so happy they gave him money because, oh my god, the rebuilds are gorgeous.
The rebuilds are gorgeous. I will say I actually very much appreciated the series a lot more this time watching it because I was able to see a lot of the seams, I guess you could call them. I saw the way in which the animation was done. Like, there's a very particular like thing about cells, which is that there is this kind of weird texture to them because they're like painted, and there's almost this sense of like physical space to them because of that, where sometimes the like character models, quote unquote, because they're painted on different cells, are separated from the environment just a little bit, and you can only tell if you're really paying attention. But it's weird because it technically speaking it's a flaw, but it's like really nostalgic and like it gives you a sense of positive space in a way that you don't get with digital animation. And that's not to say that the rebuilds aren't gorgeous, because there may be some of the most like gorgeous anime to exist, like animation wise. They're so well animated, and their use of CG is so good too. Like I of course maintain that the rebuilds just look amazing, but I think there is something to the very unique era style of like the 90s of Eva. Eva is such a 90s show, and everything about it from its thematics to its anxieties to its production is representative of that. And I think there's a certain level of as people, whenever we erase impurities or whenever we fix certain things and like patch up the seams, we start to miss them. And this is a thing like all over the place. This is why cars have pseudo wood panels, and this is why we listen to distorted music, because speakers don't get distorted anymore because they're so good now, but we just kind of wreck them on purpose to make them sound a certain way because we miss that sound. Which I think is very interesting and also very representative of Eva. So, and I will say, in defense of the rebuilds, they're a much more cohesive story, and they're also formatted for a movie, like much better than the Madoka movies. They're definitely reformatted to be like a movie and paced like a movie. I will say I do. There's a little bit of that Madoka thing where I do miss the fact that the Cruel Angel Thesis plays before every episode.
Yeah.
Because it just turns out that, fucking Hideaki Anno decided to use something that accidentally became the most iconic song and the best opening of all time. Like, it's so good. I've never skipped the opening to Eva, ever.
Yeah. It's too good.
It's just too good.
I actually really enjoy his music choices, like, throughout the series. Like, it feels like he really digs in and analyzes what would be good for, from scene to scene. Like, sometimes it seems like a little odd, like during End of Eva, when the world is ending, the song that plays is actually really nice and pleasant.
I mean, yeah. The song that plays is like, it's like Ode to Joy.
Yeah, well, yeah.
I'm pretty sure it's Ode to Joy.
When during that episode when Kaoru is about to bite the dust, they play Ode to Joy for like a straight 5 minutes, and then and then he dies. But like during End of Eva, they oh god, I forget the name of the song, but it's just this lady that's just singing about like dreams and stuff like that, and it's all nice and kind of happy sounding. But yeah, the world, everyone is being liquefied, and the world is ending.
I mean, it's true. I do really like his music choices. A lot of them are very. I mean, a lot of them are classical pieces actually, but
Yes,
they
yes,
end
they
up
are.
working really well. So
Yeah, absolutely.
yeah, it's weird. I'll say like Ava is such a bizarre show, and part of it is it's like it is a very much a lot about these like kind of conflicting identities and the way that we represent and think of ourselves and the way that we project ourselves on other people. But then it also shows us kind of the logical conclusion of wishing to be rid of that, where everyone is the same and we're all just one collective people soup.
Yeah, it's basically it derives from people not wanting to be fearful of each other, not wanting to be rejected from each other, which makes me think that all these people that are behind the Instrumentality Project, you know, Seal and everyone, they're just all people that faced rejection at some point and got so bitter about it that they wanted to end the world.
The people behind Seal are just like the world's like weirdest death cult. You know? Yeah, I mean, I will say it's a very like Kafka-esque statement about the impossibility of making genuine connections in the modern world, right?
Yeah.
Like there is so much about Ava that is it's a very anxious show. It's like
Yes.
anxious about technology. It's anxious about modern society and how we communicate. It's anxious about like gender roles. And I'll say it is very. Anno is definitely a man. You know what I mean? Like there's a lot of this show where it's like this odd fixation with, and part of it is because it explores like very Freudian themes and like Freudian Lacanian themes, where it's like very much like, oh, these are all like powerful scientists, career women, but also they just want to be women. It's like, well, okay, all right, sure, right? Like, but I also think that to some extent, in defense of Anno, like he was the first one to really explore that, and everyone else decided, hey, that's cool, and just kind of copied it without really thinking about what that meant. And
yeah.
Because it's the thing about it to me is it's not saying like women are only women at the end of the day, right? It's just saying that people are always going to be beholden to their base instincts and desires, right? You know, this is where at the end, where Ritsuko tries to like blow up the computer, and the computer, which is her mom's brain, is like, no, I'm gonna choose Gendo. And more about Gendo later. But like every time I watch Ava, I continually forget how awful of a human being Gendo Ikari is. Just like, I don't know how it is that I keep forgetting. It's like, oh wow, he's like pretty bad as like he's a pretty bad dad. But then you watch the series and it's like, okay, he's a terrible father to Shinji, and he decides that he's going to end the world to see his wife again and become God. And then also he sleeps with like all of the women that he ever comes into contact with, which is like, okay, that's just gross, dude. Like, come on. Let's take a step back again, though. Your priorities are all over the place.
I think the way that the show frames it is like these women were pursuing him, right? Ritsuko and her mom.
I mean, yes.
But yeah,
but it's like you can't. I mean, here's the thing: is like you can't have that be like, okay, Gendo is sleeping with Ritsuko's mom, and now Gendo is sleeping with Ritsuko. That's just.
I know it's icky.
It's icky.
But
it's
also,
icky,
like.
But yeah, right. In defense of that, I think like that's the point, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Is it's not uncritical of that relationship.
No, it's not. And I think what it's there for and what it focuses on is that even though, of course, Gendo is still in love with Yui, he only wants to be with her. Even he has like that base primal side of him that's just like, oh, these ladies want to sleep with me. I'll sleep with them. Why not? Like, he doesn't say no to them, right? Like, even though he very well could for moral reasons.
See, I also, I mean, I will say, I do think that this is part of the, like, Shinji in Gendo, where he just kind of goes along with a lot of what people, like, project onto him. He just kind of, he doesn't say no a lot, except for when it comes to, like, cutting Shinji off and, like, not talking to him. He's like, no, Shinji, I don't want to talk to you.
I think the analysis on Gendo, especially in End of Eva, like towards the end, you know, is really interesting because they basically exemplify him as another, like is just a grown-up Shinji, right? He is the Hedgehog's dilemma, like completed, like a just the more extreme version of Shinji, right? Shinji doesn't want to interact with other people because he's afraid of hurting them, and so he thinks it's better to just that he experiences the pain himself, but because he's so hurt, he ends up running away. With Gendo, he's already given up on making bonds with other people because he doesn't think that he can be ever truly loved again by anyone after Yui, right? And so he rejects his own son before his son has the chance to reject him. I think that ultimately Gendo represents what Shinji could have been if the same thing were to happen to him.
Yeah, and I mean, I think that's true throughout the series. I think that in a lot of ways, everything is always about what could happen,
right?
And like the impacts are kind of like the ultimate conclusion of this, right? Where they say in the End of Eva, they're just like, you know, the angels are derived from the same like being as humans, right? Humans are the 18th angel, and all of the angels just represent what humanity could have been, but they can't coexist, right?
Right.
So I think that's very interesting. Is it and there's a statement about like we're all like we all come from the same place, but it's just impossible for us to reconcile our existences. And you know, this is on a large scale from like, you know, humans and angels cannot exist without destroying each other, to the slightly smaller scale of people all have these AT fields, and they have these walls around their hearts that prevents them from making like connections. So yeah, it's all about possibility and freedom and choice and agency and what that really means. Mm-hmm. And it's very much about identity too. Yeah,
100%. And the whole ending of Eva, when Shinji is about to come upon his choice on whether to choose instrumentality or not, is all about like him having to face all the rays and stuff, and basically losing what they were calling his ego boundary. Was all about like basically kind of like driving him so crazy that he loses his sense of self, right? His sense of identity. And that's what helps make him vulnerable to being a catalyst for the instrumentality project. And so once you basically lose your sense of self, that's when you become people soup.
Yep, pretty much. I mean, God, this story is so Oedipal. Like, she like, and you know that Anno is doing it on purpose because there's like the very like it's almost like they're almost tongue in cheek in the way that they're placed throughout the series. These like moments where they're talking about Freudian psychology. Like there's a point in the series where like someone on the radio is talking about the oral stage of psychological development, and even though Freud does not hold like water in a psychological context, he does hold water in a literary context because of the influence of his works. It's kind of like this weird self-recursive like Inception type thing, where because Freud's ideas have, you know, been accepted and thought about and debated by a lot of people, it's naturally going to affect the literature of those people. And so even though it's not a model for which we can view real human beings, it is a model by which we can view certain stories. And it's not a lens that you can apply to everything, mind you, because I think there isn't one that you can do that with, and to the idea of that is like kind of problematic. But this is a story that is explicitly like very Freudian and very Oedipal. Like Shinji sleeps with his mom, which really he sees his mom in every girl that he meets, really, that is important to him. And he like unseats his father as the male figure. He doesn't kill his dad directly, but there's a thing about that. And he gets real depressed and he's like, I should just die, which is what Oedipus does. He's just like, oh God, what did I do? And then he like rips his own eyeballs out.
Yeah.
Or something like that. Yeah, it's very. I mean, it's interesting because I sent you that tweet earlier that I made about how pregnant women fighting is two infants having a mech battle, and I said that's the plot of Evangelion.
That is,
and it is. Like there is this like Freudian desire to always return to the mother, to return to the womb, right?
Yeah.
Like the mother is the first being from which you are a part of and separated from. So
right.
Yes, and it's interesting that he begins to see Misato as like a mother figure and her home as his home. And there's like stuff to dig into there, but like at the end of the day, it's just like, man, it's just so fucked up. Like Shinji jacks it to Asuka's unconscious body. That's it's gross. And God, I can't wait until Evangelion comes onto Netflix and people can watch it legally, and we have just a whole new era of Evangelion discourse. It's gonna be so tasty, and by which I mean I hope I'm gonna close my eyes and not look at it. But I think here's the thing: is I think that scene is important, and most of all, it's like done very tastefully. Like let's not mince words here. That is sexual assault, but it's done very tastefully. You know, it's not gratuitous, and it serves a purpose, right?
Yes, because these are
kids. These are young children.
Yeah,
like entering adulthood, adolescence, and like dealing with all those like gross hormonal feelings, but also. It's important because it is central to the theme of the show, which is, I mean, the at this point it's a franchise, right? It's like it's series, everything. I don't know. There's like movies of the show, and then a show, and there's a movie that makes the whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But it's important because it explores this idea of crossing boundaries, right? And yeah, Shinji crosses a huge boundary there. Like that's not okay, but that's the point, right? Where that the crossing of boundaries, and all the characters are constantly crossing each other's boundaries like all the time, right? And that's the point, right? This AT field, this idea of your ego, of your unintrudable space. It's not unintrudable, right? People come into that shit all the time,
mm-hmm.
right? This is like where Unit 01 is like the first like fight with an angel we see, where it's just like ripping into an angel's personal space, like psychologically and physically, and then crushes its heart brain. But yeah, it's about crossing boundaries and talking about how as a person living in a society, you will inevitably cross people's boundaries. They're like the walls they erect around their hearts, and that's gonna be a problem. But it's one, unavoidable, and two, like bad, but also like that's just what life is, and you kind of need to live knowing that that's gonna happen, and that you have to work around that, and not just that like this boundary is invincible, right? It's not. It is permeable.
Yeah, I think there's important lessons too, especially in End of Eva, about how to specifically use your AT field, you know, in situations like, you know, Asuka literally uses it as a shield when she's fighting the mass production Evas, but she uses it, you know, opportunistically, right? When she masters it, and she manifests it through her love of her mom and her mom's protection.
I always find that scene so interesting.
Yeah, it's interesting too, like the fact that Asuka and Shinji are such good foils for each other. Like scene for scene, you'll see Shinji do one thing, Asuka doesn't do that thing. Shinji says goodbye to his mom. Just the prior scene, Asuka welcomes her mom and returns to her mom, right? Like that kind of stuff is so good.
Yeah. It's, I mean, a big part of Eva is this idea of identity, and this and I actually realized this while I was watching Eva, but I realized why I like Dragon Pilot, and it's because Dragon Pilot is just Evangelion, but without all the like. It's a very accessible Evangelion is what I'll say. It's like, as weird as the premise is, it's a lot less weird than Eva is. And it's I think it's much more palatable for people. So if you don't like body horror, but you are interested in Eva, maybe watch Dragon Pilot. But like there is this idea of the Evangelion, right? The Eva as derived from humans, as approaching divinity, and also as a psychic link and a shield.
Yes.
And basically, like the pilot within, when their mental state is not doing well, they cannot pilot the Eva well. So when your mind is not in sync with your body, when your identity is not in sync with your body, then you're going to have trouble. Like functioning. And I mean, I think part of this is like maybe some like on some deep level, there's like Anno's depression like coming up and like surfacing in his experiences with that, because like that's, I mean, Shinji is just like, that dude is clinically depressed. Like there's boyo like Shinji.
Clinical depression, clinical anxiety, like a lot of the stuff that he says are things that I've heard from clinically depressed or clinically anxious people. And
yeah, exactly.
It's such a personal expression of Anno's experiences that I can see why he has to tell the story and why he can't ever let it go. Aside from, how big the story has gotten, but also like I can see how dissatisfied he would be with how the franchise has become, right? Like with how commercially successful it's been. Like, of course, it's great that people resonate with it, but also like, I don't know how I would feel if I made a whole series that basically lets out all of my insecurities, all of my horrible experiences and what I've learned from them. And then people just use it as an opportunity to fetishize certain characters and stuff like that, and completely gloss over the things that I felt were important, right?
I mean, that's true. I think Anno doesn't care quite as much, just because it means he now has infinite money to make Eva 3.0 plus 1.0. Which I think is hilarious.
Make his own studio, so I'm proud of him.
That dude has so much money now to make the anime movie of his dreams. And if 3.0 plus 1.0 ever comes out, I think it's just going to like melt my eyeballs. I think that at this point it will just melt my eyeballs. I don't think my brain can handle something as advanced as 3.0 plus 1.0. But yeah, I will agree that I think that it speaks from a very personal place, and a lot of these characters get very frozen, and they have to reconcile their identity before they're able to move forward, right? Where Asuka eventually reaches some kind of conclusion. I'm not gonna make a claim and say it's positive, because she's quite manic in that scene. But it does feel good when she's just like, when she kind of like deals with it and she's just like, I'm fucking invincible. You're like, yeah, Asuka, that's right, you're invincible. I mean, she's not, but it makes you feel good when she says it.
Yeah, I think for me, one of the conclusions that she reaches is, the way that her mother died, it made Asuka feel like she was an unwanted child that whole time. And that's something that Shinji also struggles with in the feelings of being unwanted. But Asuka always pushed through it by, being better than everyone else, right? By being prettier, by being stronger, by being more charismatic. And then that realization at the end that all this time her mother didn't want, Asuka to die, didn't think that Asuka was worthless. It was that, even though her mother was dead, she was still watching over her. And so Asuka drew strength from that and was able to overcome one of the biggest insecurities that had been holding her back.
Yeah, and I mean, like going back to what you were talking about before, where the like how Shinji and Asuka are foils for each other. I think it's very relevant when you look at how they eventually come to terms with their like various traumas, because like Asuka realizes that she is basically doing everything so that people will look at her, because she always felt like an unwanted child, right? Like she does a lot of these things by the same motivations as Shinji. She's trying to protect herself from being hurt, and so she comes off as very abrasive.
Yes.
And Shinji also, right? Like it's kind of perfect how the series or the movie ends with Asuka and Shinji not talking to each other, and Shinji is choking Asuka out, and then she like puts a hand up to his face and he stops, and then she's just like, hate you or whatever.
She says she says he's disgusting.
Right, it's like you're pathetic.
Yeah.
Right? Like kind of an Asuka thing to say.
Yeah.
But it's very interesting to me that Shinji is someone who like refuses to understand, basically to ask, whereas Asuka is someone who is afraid to like speak or speak like honestly, right?
Right.
So,
yes.
Where Shinji is having like Shinji has trouble understanding people, and Asuka doesn't say anything, right? So it's this perfect kind of like headbutt of mismatched expectations, where Asuka assumes that people will understand her, even though she doesn't say anything that will be helpful, right? Even though that she can't speak from her heart. And Shinji doesn't even try to understand people. He just assumes people are mad at him.
Right.
Right, and it shows that like both of those approaches are wrong, right?
Yeah.
It's like it is important to look at the fact that they are both not correct, and that you cannot like you can't exist doing one or the other. You have to understand, and you have to try to understand, and you have to explain yourself to people, and you can't just go through life expecting people to understand you and expecting yourself to be understood without saying anything.
Right, exactly. And I think that resolution of their two very completely opposite standings in terms of interactions with other people does get resolved really well in that single silent moment, right? Like during that
it's a moment of like pure communication, right? They're not talking.
Exactly.
They're just existing.
Yes.
And like it's a very physical and almost like primal, right? There's almost something like kind of like this is beyond like connection, right? This is like pure transmission.
Yeah, it's like an expression of what they were, yelling at each other during the kind of like hallucinatory or I don't know, illusory kind of thing that Shinji was going through, where he was yelling at the voices, in the Asuka, Misato, and Rei voices, who are all like kind of like being like seducing him into instrumentality, and he like is angry with them and says like, you guys were never, why didn't you ever try being nice to me? You're all just trying to make me do one thing or the other. Why didn't you actually try being kind to me? And then they say, oh, but we were. And he says, no, you were smiling at me, but really you were just trying to be ambiguous. And it's that ambiguity that confused me and drove me, to doing stupid things, right? And so when Asuka finally shows him a moment of kindness at the end. And when Shinji finally acts on his anger, all his pent up frustration, that's when they finally understand each other and they can resolve it.
Yeah, a moment of pure transmission at the end of the world.
Yeah.
See, what's interesting to me is I'm definitely not alone in this, but I'm so curious as to see what the hell Anno is doing with the rebuilds, because they're different, right?
Yes.
Where the story branches off into something completely different.
Mm-hmm. I am so excited, but also, I've rewatched the rebuilds a couple of times now, and
okay, you thought we were doing the rebuilds, all of them.
But before this also, because I was just like, I need to understand this. But I've only rewatched End of Eva like twice, right? So this most recent time, I can understand, right, when I was watching the rebuilds, why people were so upset with 3.0, right? Because 3.0 is like the biggest departure from the original series. But if you watch 3.0 and then immediately go back and rewatch End of Eva, you'll see exactly how it connects. Like, it's incredible how some of the scenes and some of the imagery are exactly from End of Eva. And people don't realize because it's been so long since End of Eva. But because the rebuilds, the first one is a remake of the story up until you meet Asuka. And then the second one is from Asuka until, past Rei's death. And basically up until the third impact, right, the last couple of episodes. And then 3.0 is when you meet Kaoru, and so it covers like the last couple of the episodes from the end of the series and End of Eva. So even though it feels like such a huge departure because there was a big old time skip and everything, it's actually a really good remake of End of Eva, and I don't think a lot of people realize that.
Yeah, there is an element of, Anno is just redoing Eva until he gets it right, which is to say, I think he is just continuing to refine it until it represents what his original vision was, right? Whether it was bound by inexperience or budget or animation or even technical limitations, right? He's come out and said, like, now that CG is so good, I can do whatever the hell I want.
Yeah. And I think it's good.
and I will say this episode isn't about the rebuilds because that's for next year.
But I am excited to talk about them because, oh my god, all of the illusions about it being like a sequel to the series and stuff, I'm there. I'm so there.
Right, it's the series, the set of movies is called Shin Evangelion, which can mean new, or it can mean true.
Yes.
So it's somewhat unclear because Anno is very aware of and likes to kind of mess with language, which is why there's like English speaking and German speaking in the original series of dubious quality, but that's just how it be sometimes. Because it's important to him. It seems like, and from a Japanese context in like the 90s, it is very important. Like the fact that Asuka's Eva is set to like the German thought, right? The idea that your language defines your thoughts and binds the edges of your thought is a somewhat hotly contested topic in the linguistic world, but it nonetheless is a very powerful tool for exploring how language affects us. And he's like, the thing about it is like he's so mysterious about it, I guess, is like he's so eccentric because apparently the Eva team is the one that chooses the English names of the movies, which, so you know how the movies are, 1.0 you are not alone in parentheses, 2.0 you cannot advance, and then you cannot redo. Well, the Eva team chooses those, but that's not what they're called in Japanese. It's Evangelion, Jo, Ha, and Q, which is a reference to the traditional method of pacing in Japanese like plays, basically, where it's about like setup and rapidly accelerating and then like hitting the like point where you're like whoopah, right? The like impact point. I mean, think of just like that classic Japanese noise that's just like bum bum, bum bum, woo, clap clap, right? Like that sort of thing. That's Johaku.
Okay.
And that was, I mean, okay, listen, I tried my best. I'm still a little sick, and like you can't expect me to do that actually well.
So is the last movie gonna be like Joe Q or Q Joe?
No. So okay, here's the weird thing, because it's 3.0 plus 1.0 in English, but in the Japanese it is the repeating sign for a musical measure.
Yeah.
Like it's just Evangelion and then this musical notation.
Yeah.
And no one knows how to pronounce it because yeah, of course not. Like what do we call that? Anno? What do we call that? Yeah, I think that's very interesting. And I'm like, they make a lot of choices about the translation, which is not something I've really seen from any like translated piece at all, other than like very specific books like Ancillary Justice, right? Where the language is a very key component to it. It's very important. Where technically, like, some of the translations are not one for one from Japanese to English, but Anno and the team just chose them. You know, like, I think something about like Angels. I think Angels is like a mistranslation, but it's just what they use, right?
Mm-hmm.
So there's something very fascinating about that to me. God, Anna, please just release the movie. I just want to see it. I want to see this, and I want to see the hopefully final Madoka movie, and then I'll just be done, man.
I love
that phase of my life will be over. I'll be able to put down anime forever.
Madoka pretty closely parallels Eva in terms of its like
Madoka could not exist without Neon Genesis Evangelion.
It's so funny too, like, and the fact that the third Madoka movie was also just as hotly received as hotly contested as the third Evangelion movie is
fair,
great.
Fair. yeah. I mean, it's the rebuilds are good, but we're gonna get more in depth into all the weird shit that happens in those next year.
Yeah.
For our next anniversary, and maybe by the third anniversary, God willing, you know, if we're still going by then, if the world hasn't exploded, and
I mean, it's scheduled for 2020, which I'll
exactly.
You know,
maybe then, maybe then. We'll have that movie. So yeah. Or maybe we'll just break tradition and just review it on the spot. I mean, it's important enough to our podcast, I guess. But yeah, I really liked End of Eva, and even though it was just so weird, like Evangelion is such a dense show. Yes. Normally when I watch an anime, my brain just kind of like flickers off, and I just like run through 4 hours. I'm like, cool. I've come out the other side of 4 hours, and with Evangelion, I'm just like, I'm still watching the same episode.
It's like I can feel my brows furrowing as I'm like trying to analyze each little flicker of a scene, because you know they do a lot of like flash imagery throughout the series.
Okay, yes.
So
if you have epilepsy, do not watch these movies or the series.
Yeah.
The last couple episodes of this series.
Yeah.
Holy shit! Yeah. I never realized how unfriendly this was to epileptics.
Yeah. It's very, very bad.
Until like now. I think all of the 90s was really like this. I watched Rurouni Kenshin recently, and like every time he does the Amakakeru Ryu no Hirameki, it's just like, whoa, my eyes hurt. Like, whoa, this is painful to watch. You're really going for. I'm just like, thank God for Pokemon just like putting kids in the hospital, because now they darken these scenes so that we don't have to die. Yeah, it's but yeah, and I will say I think and we're talking about the rebuilds again, but
I know
I appreciate what Anno does with the rebuilds, where he's come out and said he's like, I want to make these more approachable and more understandable, which is, I think, an admirable thing, because I don't think I have a very complicated relationship with accessibility and art. I don't think art has to be accessible to everyone, but I think you should at least try to make it accessible to as many people as possible. Right.
Because Ava has a pretty notorious reputation. Yeah,
Ava has a notorious reputation for being just weird, right? Yeah. And like completely incomprehensible. And I mean, part of the reason why we're here. We're here to explain things, and maybe you'll get something, or maybe it'll just all be like literature major jargon, and I've just confused you even further. And for that, I'm sorry. I'll try my best next time, I suppose. But yeah, like I mean, it is a real concern sometimes, where you're just like, I mean, people might not understand this. And I think it is, on one hand, brave to just be like, I put a piece of art out there, and it's not going to be for everyone, but for some people, it's going to resonate, right? Mm-hmm. But I also think it's admirable to say, like, I want this to reach as many people as possible. And I appreciate what Anno is doing. And God willing, I hope he just, like, maybe removes those scenes where they flash a bunch.
They go a lot easier on them in the movie, in the rebuilds, I mean.
And all right, I've just gotten the signal that I am gonna have someone come pick me up soon, so we should start to wrap up.
Okay, let's wrap up.
This was kind of a short episode. For that, I'm kind of sorry, but
I'm not sorry. We're being snappy.
I don't know if we're being snappy, because the advantage of having the like long drawn out episodes is that I can return to like the kind of messy thoughts I have. That's just a joke. I don't ever do anything like that. I don't ever explore things deeply. I just say things and I'm like, I point to it and I'm like, yeah, Freud, sex.
No.
Okay, I will say, closing thoughts on Evangelion. I do think that the like nakedness and the sex is like part of this idea of making deeper human connections. It's a very Kafka-esque thing where people just get naked in front of each other, or bare skin, or whatever.
Right.
I took an entire class on Kafka. I'm sorry if I just keep bringing up Franz Kafka, but people in Japan like Kafka.
I think it's especially poignant in a society like Japan's, right? Where they are...
Yes.
Yeah, like they're very, very modest, and there's a lot of humility, and to just bare your soul is a lot.
It's just the idea of living in a modern society, right? Where even... This is the case in American society.
Yeah, that's
where
true.
It is so hard to make connections with people, because there's one, and we've talked about this with the Twitch episode, where there's no infrastructure for community building, and two, you're not really expected, or you're expected to never show emotional vulnerability or honesty. So because that makes you weak, like, and because of our patriarchal society, it aligns you with womanhood and femininity, which is bullshit. But anyway, yeah, I will say Kafka is very, and I did my entire like final in that class about this, but Kafka is integral to Japanese culture insofar as it is about alienation in society, in modern society. And Ava talks a lot about that. It has a lot of ideas about technology and the way that it is trending, like science and technology trending in a way where we're moving away from science and technology for humanity's sake, and we're moving towards science and technology for discovery's sake, for the sake of power. So
yeah,
it's very, very interesting. I love that the supercomputers are like biocomputers, where they have like brain, like quote unquote brains in them, and then like the Maggie supercomputer in Nerve headquarters is just Ritsuko's mom.
Yeah.
Yeah. I could just do like an entire 15-minute talk about that, but this is wrap up time. And Ava, it's technology and society makes it hard to make connections, but maybe the end of the world is coming, so don't worry.
We'll see in 2020.
Yeah, we'll see in 2020 if the world explodes. And God, I say that, but actually now that I've said that out loud with my mouth and heard it with my ears, I'm afraid that that's going to be the case now. It sounds plausible. Do you have any closing thoughts?
Closing thoughts is, if you ever deep dive into Eva, pay very close attention to anything that old man Fuyutsuki says. Everything he says
Fuyutsuki is such a good character.
Relevant. So relevant.
Man, when we watch the rebuilds, we're just going to like spend half an hour talking about Fuyutsuki.
Yes, we will.
Good Lord, Fuyutsuki.
Also, Kaoru is the best, and
Kaoru is the best, and Shinji is probably gay, or at least bi. I think. I don't know. This is another one of those like Kafka things where it's just like males bonding, but like in a gay way. Like this isn't your two dudes sitting in a hot tub like 5 feet apart because they're not gay. This is like two guys sitting in the collective bath holding hands naked because they are gay. And
one of them says he loves the other.
He does. In exactly those words, he says both koi and ski, which are both ways of saying I love you. So, like, I mean, I don't know what you need more than like they hold hands naked in the bath and Kaori says he loves Shinji and Shinji says, "Man, I loved Kaoru." I don't know what else. I don't know what else you want from me.
What else do you want from me, world?
Yeah. I have a lot of thoughts about that, but those are also rebuild thoughts because Kaoru only shows up for like 2 episodes in the actual series. And in the rebuilds, he gets like a whole movie.
He has like maybe 10 collective seconds in End of Eva.
Yeah, but he's so important in the rebuilds, though. Like, he's such a central... I mean, he's an important character to the series, too. And I see why Anno decided he wanted to explore that relationship more, because that's like probably one of the most interesting ones that appears, because it's so different from the rest of his relationships. Mm-hmm. It's so different from his relationship with Asuka and Rei and Misato. But you can... It was like Neon Genesis Evangelion is definitely like created by a dude, because he's just like women, jobs, sex, and I mean it was a valid concern in the 90s. I don't get me wrong, where like it's not just about like career women, right? It is about people who devote themselves so much to their job that they forsake their personal lives. And this is it's not just the women that do this, right? Like Misato's dad does this, Gendo does this, like they're all like this. Yeah. And it's very relevant even to today's modern Japanese society, right? Because it's like, the birth rate is going down because everyone is overworked to death because capitalism is terrible and no one gets a break ever. And I think they also explore in terms of like trying to fit Shinji to that mold, right? Because throughout the series, you constantly hear them say, like, "You're a man, aren't you? Why don't you do this and that and the other?" And Shinji's I don't know about any of this. That's true. There's a very like pointed statement about like there's a lot of statements pointed at Shinji about like just man up. Yes. And Shinji's like, I'm just not like that, right? Yeah. He's like, I know. And he also is kind of like, he's a bit of like a house husband too, kind of, because he also cooks, right? He cooks and cleans. Well, this is the thing about Shinji that I think that this is a lot of the reason that people take issue with Shinji, where they're just like, oh, he's just a whiny baby, right? Shinji is so different from shonen, like anime protagonists in general. He's so different from them. Yes. Right? He's like, he cooks and he doesn't like to fight. He doesn't like to kill people or hurt people. And he's very feminine in a way. Yeah. Where it's like, insofar as like he's not hyper masculine, right? But he's so different from an anime protagonist, or what you would expect from an anime protagonist. And I think that's really important, especially in the time that Eva came out. Mm-hmm. And it continues to be important, right? This is why people don't like Steven in Steven Universe, which is like, first of all, how could you? Second of all, I see it. It's toxic masculinity. That's why. Exactly. I think the whole like, man up, be a man kind of thing. They explore the toxicity of that in Eva too, which I find really interesting, considering, it came out in the 90s, right? yeah, there's a lot of very insightful things that Anno has to say about people.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's a super fun. Well, I'm not gonna say fun, but it is a watch. It is a very important
It's
watch.
a wild ride.
It is important. It's Hideaki Anno's wild ride. It's important to the history of anime. It is important to the history of animation and media in the 21st century.
Whoa.
Good God, like everything is Evangelion. Really. I wish I was joking, but everything is Evangelion.
Even Steven Universe is Evangelion.
Even Steven Universe has a lot of Ava in it. A lot of Ava in it. But yeah, so in that's Ava. End of Ava, at least for now. Maybe we'll just touch on it at some point in the future. But that's it for now because I have to go, basically. We're out of time.
Yeah.
Just a little bit about the podcast coming up. We're working on some stuff, and it's going to be cool. We're working on getting some music that's not going to get us nuked into the ground by whoever owns the soundtrack for Ava, which at this point is really ambiguous. Maybe, I don't know.
Hideaki Anno himself will come to our houses.
Yeah, exactly. Hideaki Anno will come to my house and he'll just like put me in a robot and I'll die.
No!
I'll turn into a
My
people
sweet
soup.
cooking boy.
And the world will end. But yeah, we're working on getting some music. We already have like updated logos and stuff, and of course we're always working to improve the podcast.
Yeah, it's been a whole year. Thanks for hanging out with us.
It's been a whole year. It's been wild. We've made wild leaps in audio quality, at least on my end, because I bought a new microphone.
Wow, shade.
Well, actually,
Should I get a microphone too?
No, hang on. Here's the thing: is your audio has always been fine. It's just that my audio, I've changed mics and interfaces twice now. So here we are. Yeah, we've got some other stuff in the works, but we're not ready to announce those yet. But yeah, thanks for sticking with us for a year.
Thanks for a whole year.
Thanks for a whole year. Thanks for listening. We always appreciate it. Mm-hmm. And here's to another one.
Yay!
Of more Ava, more Akechigoro eating his fucking heart out.
Oh my god.
I don't know, more Yakuza, I guess.
Probably. I'll never stop.
Probably. More maybe signs of the apocalypse, but who knows about that one.
2020, let's go. But first we got to make it through 2019.
That's true. Hopefully we can make it through 2019. I bet we can. Listen, just imagine that you're Asuka. Imagine that you're fucking invincible, okay? Because you are. Okay. Like
I'm more of a Shinji.
Mentally. Hold on. Mentally, right? Like don't run yourself into a bunch of cars or anything, because you don't have an AT field outside your body. It's only inside your body.
Okay.
But I believe in you. You're fucking invincible. Yeah, Renu, where can we find you? What are you up to?
You can find me on Instagram at swan.drawn. Everywhere else is SwanDrawn. I will be on holiday when this comes out, so I will not be on the internet. But by the time the next podcast comes out, I will be. So
if only I could be so lucky.
Yeah, what about you?
You can find me on all the places at Literal Soup, especially my itch.io page, because I haven't released a new game. I'm sorry. I kind of made it sound like that with the wind-up. But I realized that my game is basically if you turned if it's like Ava, except that one Ava at the end of the series where it's like the school Ava.
Okay.
Yeah, where you play like an alien and a human fall in love. And that's basically what happens with Shinji and Kaoru. So find me there. I do a lot of tweeting. I tweet lots, I retweet lots, I post pictures of the food I make, and I make shit posts like talking about how Evangelion is two pregnant women fighting, except now they're just like encased in armor. Sometimes I'm funny, I feel like, maybe. And yeah, I hope you tune in next time for whatever that is. It will be something, It'll swear.
It'll be in the new year.
Yeah, because like, good lord, we still have so much to cover. God knows that the season is ending and the world is falling apart. But
It'll be
I think
fine.
we can hold it. I think we can hold it together for another year. Just remember, you're fucking invincible. Akechigoro, eat your fucking heart out.
He's not invincible.
He's not invincible. He died. It's the last Akechigoro of the year.
Oh.
Maybe next year we'll pick a different slogan. Or maybe you'll just keep hassling Akechigoro.
But now he's in the dancing game, so just let him dance.
Is he actually in the dancing game?
I think he is.
God's sakes. He's dead. Accept it. Also, Gendo Akari, you too. Eat your fucking heart out. Jesus, dude.